welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am your host, Jessica, and I'm here with a book that is so good that I have zero words for how it ended and how I felt about how it ended, except for, oh, wow. Uh, yeah, which is a good oh, wow, by the way. But I want to welcome our guest. Please tell us who you are and tell us about this book.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Kamilah Cole, and I am the author of the YA duology, the Divine Traders duology, which began in 2024 with So Let Them Burn and concluded in 2025 with This Ends in Embers. And that was my Jamaican-inspired Joan of Arc with dragons. And now I am debuting in adult on December 30th, 2025 with An Arcane Inheritance, which is my adult dark academia romantic fantasy about a 21-year-old late freshman named Ellery Morgan who, starts to question her reality at her Ivy League university when she finds a tattoo on the back of her neck that she does not remember getting that just says, "Remember." And from there, she must team up with the school's golden boy, Hudson Graves, in order to investigate what has happened to her memories and what is her reality and who stands to benefit from keeping her in ignorance. An Arcane Inheritance is a book that's very close to my heart. It's my first adult book, and I am really, really excited and terrified to share it with all of you.
I mean, if you're going to say you're terrified that a whole lot of people are going to love it, be terrified because I think a whole lot of people are going to love it. I thought this was such a beautifully done book. It was weird in the best way. I don't say weird meaning bad.
No, that's a compliment for me.
Like I would just say icky, but it's not icky. It's the opposite in every way. It is gorgeously weird. That's my endorsement. Gorgeously weird. The language is wonderful. The world is just so well written that I could almost feel like I was walking around with Ellery at the school. I could picture all the characters in my head. I felt like I was sitting in some of those dinner parties, feeling awkward in the best way. But yeah, really, what a wonderful, wonderful contribution to dark academia, dark fantasy, romance. I fell in love with the characters and everything about it. So thank you. Tell us
Thank
a little
you.
bit. Oh no, thank you for writing it. This is the part where it's just a love fest between
Yeah.
the two of us. But no, thank you for sharing it and making that leap from YA to adults because it felt very natural. I think a lot of the things that I'm enjoying seeing come out of a lot of different writers either playing with genre or changing course slightly, shifting to adult from YA is just this fact that like adults want to read about things that give them big emotions and get under their skin. That doesn't stop when you're a teen. It continues. And I think people are really getting this. And this book really got that so well. So why don't you tell us, first of all, a little bit about this world where the idea for the school came from, Ellery, Hudson, Liam, all of their friends. How did this all start for you?
So this starts, I've told like many different origin stories here, and it's because, when you write a book, you tend to take inspiration from many disparate places. So there's no one real origin point anymore. For the story itself, it started as I wanted to write a Sleeping Beauty retelling because I was obsessed with the movie Inception. And I wanted to write a Sleeping Beauty retelling that combined it with Inception, where they had to go inside her dreams and get her back, sort of thing. And I just could not make that work. So it was kind of sitting in a file on my computer somewhere. And then for an Arcane Inheritance specifically, came about because I love dark academia. I love dark academia, the genre that takes a critical eye to the racism, classism, and elitism inherent in higher education. But I also love dark academia as an aesthetic where it's just a bunch of kids at a school in their blazers and murder happens, Like I love just every aspect of it. And I always wanted to write my own, and I read so many that I was like, what can I add to this genre in any way? And I wasn't seeing a lot that covered dark academia from the first generation immigrant experience. I wasn't seeing a lot of dark academia that covered it from a middle class sort of setting. A lot of the protagonists were like very, very poor scholarship kids. And, I was lucky enough to be a middle class person growing up, which meant that I was not qualified for many of the scholarships that I needed in order to go to university, which is like a different kind of problem. And then I wanted to explore it from the point of view, and I had read quite a few books like this from the point of view of someone from a minority background who, has parents to please, expectations to live up to, an American dream that looks slightly different from the born in American dream. So all of that kind of came together to combine with my love for a different film, which is the Conjuring franchise, that follows a idealized version of Ed and Lorraine Warren. After whom my fictional Ivy League is named. So it all just came together into this like Ninth House meets The Conjuring meets Inception, from the point of view of a first generation Jamaican American immigrant, dark academia, just my addition to a very rich literary canon that I love and respect so much.
I'm so glad you mentioned the ninth house because if I would have thought like, okay, if I had to sell this to somebody and they lo really loved that book, this is what I would recommend them going for because there is sort of a kindred spirit in it, and I definitely feel it in a really good way. But it's its own thing. I don't want people thinking it's not because really it is an arcane inheritance is very unique. I just adored being out of the loop with Ellery also, and just her reactions to Hudson and how sometimes they made sense to her and how sometimes they didn't. And there was like that good enemies to lovers tension growing there. The characters themselves, did they pop up on like, did they just sort of inhabit this university when all of that came together for you?
So for me, the story started with Ellery and Hudson because Ellery kind of came to me very easily because this book was my way of exploring a lot of unresolved feelings about my own college experience. So I put a lot of that into Ellery. Like I studied journalism in college, and unlike me, she couldn't because of expectation. She had less supportive parents than I did, and all of that stuff. Like, so I put a lot of my own experiences into Ellery. So she was the first. And then Hudson came along very easily because I wanted someone to be a foil to her, to be rich where she was poor, to be closed off where she was open, to be involved where she's uninvolved. Just someone to push her further along her journey. So they were actually very, very easy for what the story needed. The rest of the cast kind of came along because I needed them to need people other than each other. Um, I am a person whose life is defined by my close friendships with the other like women and queer people and like BIPOC people that I know who have supported me through my life. So there was never going to be a option where Ellery's friend group was not primarily like people of color, primarily queer people like her, like we find each other, you know? And then for Hudson, like I wanted a combination, again, it's about foiling, being a foil to Ellery. So I wanted him to have someone in his orbit with whom he was very close, and someone in his orbit with whom it's like we've kind of been forced together since we were kids. Because he is a person who is not used to making his own choices or making the right ones, in contrast to Ellery, who can't help but lead with her heart and with her empathy. So Ellery got Ty and Cody, who are Latinx and Nigerian, and Hudson got Liam and Boone on his team or teams. And then from there, it was about building out, you know, like people who seem like antagonists or seem like protagonists, but maybe their roles in the story change as the story goes on. So it was really starting with these two characters and then building the rest of the cast around them to further the story. No one is there unnecessarily.
And I think one thing that I really admired about the story was just how well everything sort of flowed, even though there were tons of twists and turns. Are you a heavy plotter, or do you like to jump in with your characters and discover things as they go along?
I am such a plotter. I cannot write if I do not know exactly what is happening or should be happening or is going. I call myself, though, more of a plantser in that I will have a detailed outline, I will have a chapter plan, and then as soon as I start the chapter, whatever happens, happens. You know, like I could write in chapter one, Ellery is studying and she like leaves the library, and that's what it says for chapter one. And then I'll get in there and Ellery is studying, but then she like pulls out a flyer, then she has a conversation with Hudson, then like I explore what happens, and then like the synopsis and chapter plan that I wrote is to keep me back on track. If I start exploring too far off the path of the plot, I tend to find that I discover the characters in the second or third draft the first time they do what I tell them to do, because I need to get to the ending that I had planned. But the second draft is where they're like, okay, this is not going to work because I am no longer the kind of like I have personality traits now. So I'm not the kind of person who will do that anymore. So you need to find a different way. So yeah, this book is very, very tightly plotted because I just don't know how to do any other way. But I kind of describe it as I call it like an Ivy League Gothic, because a lot of the plotting is in just building that dread and atmosphere and like adding in more and more things that don't totally make sense with what reality is, so that by the time you get to the climax and see what's going on, you're like, oh, it was all there. That's why I kept having these questions.
I like that you also use it's not even like you use other like points of view. You use almost like other media between the chapters in order to inform the reader that things are maybe a little different than even Ellery thinks they are. That is such a fun device. Did you want to talk to us slightly about that, please?
Yeah, so the interludes are really fun. Originally, they were at the beginning of every chapter. I cut out a lot of them actually and just went down to the ones that I thought that they were the most effective. And originally, they were all like little writings. At this point now, there's like an excerpt from a transcript. There is, you know, a look at Ellery's notes about what's going on. Like they were literally just like as if they were coming from something. And then there was going to be like a grand reveal at the end that these interludes were like excerpts from a book that Ellery is writing about her experience. But then, you know, I ended up cutting a lot of them and then really using them less to have like one more gotcha and more to expand the world and kind of help the reader piece together at the same time that Ellery is like certain things So I really liked writing those. I really got great direction from my editor on them. She would point out when like one didn't totally make sense or like one wasn't really adding anything. And I think that the ones that remain in the book really help to expand the world. I love like books within a book, you know? So yeah.
We haven't really touched on the magic system yet, and I don't want to completely touch on it because I don't really want to give too much about it away because I thought it was really fun and really different. But I did want to ask you about building it in the best way that you can kind of talk around it. How did it all come together?
So the magic system really came together when I read a quote by Toni Morrison about the concept of rememory, and it was essentially saying that when like I read two different quotes, so I'm probably going to blend them together here. Please don't come for me. But it was essentially saying that when we remember something, we are not remembering the facts. We are actually creating a new version of that thing colored by our minds and our experiences since then, because memories change and the inherent core part of our memory is a recreation. It's never going to be the exact truth. And then there was also the concept of like how our memories stay with us, even if we have lost the memory of something like that trauma, that like the way it affected us, we still have that. So I combined those two concepts into the core of this magic system because it just really fascinated me since we were already talking about a book where, you know, a character is questioning her reality. I thought it would be really interesting to play with the ways that magic sort of acts like it devours almost in a way, and the thing that it might be devouring is the memory, the concept of self. Like you are sacrificing something every time you create something with magic. Every time you use magic as a shortcut to get something done, you are losing some part of yourself. And like how much of yourself do you end up losing, and do those parts matter, and all of that stuff. And then, you know, that then became the concept of what if you figured out a way for somebody else to lose and you can just gain? And what kind of person would do that? So, yeah, I credit Toni Morrison entirely for the magic system. I wish I could have quoted her in the book, but I could not afford that. So,
Fair enough, but very interesting altogether. I really loved it. I do have to ask if you would return to this world ever, or if this is a standalone.
and Arcane Inheritance is definitely a standalone. I feel like I said everything that I wanted to say, and I feel like I left the characters in a place. I really like open endings. I really like that kind of like and the adventure continues sort of ending where, you know, I mean, I come from a fan fiction background, so expanding on a story is kind of like I want my readers to be able to do that. So I wrote this as a standalone. I would not be opposed to returning to the world. I mean, as an author, I will do anything for money. Uh, but I feel that I said everything that I had to say, and I like where I left these characters. And I feel that if anybody, you know, wants to write their own fan work about what happens after you turn the final page, then I invite you to, because there's so much of the world that I didn't cover or uncover. And that was on purpose because I love it when readers fill in their own blanks. But this book is a standalone.
And what are you working on next?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So a couple weeks ago, I turned in the latest draft of my next young adult duology, which begins with Wicked Endeavors. It is inspired by the Spanish Renaissance, and it is about a girl whose country was colonized by witches, and in order to get their revenge, she cons her way into their social season in order to bring them down from the inside. But her revenge scheme is complicated by her growing feelings for a manipulative enemy prince and the childhood friend who betrayed her. I describe it as Heartless Hunter meet by Kristen Ciccarelli meets For She Is Wrath by Emily Varga. And I'm really excited about that. That is supposed to come out fall 2026, unless it, like my latest revision was so bad it gets pushed. And then on the adult side, my next book is a duology opener called Heir Undying. I call it an adult princess diaries of vampires. And it is about a 26-year-old girl whose father dies. And when she goes upstate to attend his funeral, she discovers that he was the vampire king and has named her the heir to his hidden throne. And in order to claim her throne, she must work with a surly and tattooed vampire in order to learn the ways of the vampire world before she loses her first life. Yeah,
Wow.
those are two things I'm working on.
That's great. This was so much fun. I want to thank you so much. It was a pleasure to chat with you. Check out An Arcane Inheritance. I can't wait till people start talking about how amazing this book was because I can't stop talking about it.
Oh my God, thank you so much. You are so kind. I hope people love it as much as you do.
So once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My guest was,
Kamilah Cole, author of An Arcane Inheritance.
and we are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.